Oil, the lifeblood of the modern world. Almost everything around you depends on it, more than most people realize. But it wasn't always like this. Oil isn't some ancient resource we've always relied on. It's relatively new. So, how did we get here? How did something so recent become something we can't live without? Because this isn't something that happened overnight. It's an accumulation of so many events that happened so often, most people didn't even realize what's going on. To properly answer this mysterious question, we have to go back to before the 19th century, and track all of the events that have led us to today. Because this is a long one. It starts in the 1800s. No, not really. The first time ever oil was discovered was actually in 600 BC, China. They discovered oil and natural gas seeps and transported that oil by using hollowed-out bamboo. Records show that they used it in 4th century BC for medicine and for makeshift lighting and heating. But this didn't become the norm yet. Before wide use of oil, the world ran on things like wood and coal. Wood, of course, being the main one for the longest time. Energy was limited, local, and very inefficient. Then oil stepped out onto the red carpet. The very first oil well was successfully drilled up in 1846 in the Bibi Haybat settlement near Baku, Azerbaijan. But the one that is famously known as the first modern commercial well was in Pennsylvania in 1859. At the time, it wasn't about cars or global power. It was about light. Kerosene replaced whale oil and made lighting cheaper and more accessible. But what mattered wasn't just the product. It was the scale. Oil could be extracted, refined, transported, and sold at levels the world had never seen before. And very quickly, it stopped being just another resource. It became an industry. And then, it became a monopoly. So, Standard Oil enters the scene, with John D. Rockefeller at the helm. But he didn't just participate in the oil business, he controlled it. Any sphere of the process was dominated by Standard Oil: production, refining, and distribution. And at one point, his company controlled around 90% of the oil in the United States. However, this didn't last forever. In 1911, the Supreme Court stepped in and forced Standard Oil to disband into smaller branches because they violated the Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890, which was basically against companies holding a monopoly. But that level of control did two things. First, it made oil incredibly powerful, obviously. Second, it showed that whoever controlled oil could control entire markets. And that idea didn't stay in one country for long, because as demand grew, the question stopped being how to produce oil and became who controls it. By the early 1900s, oil had outgrown any single company. It was becoming the foundation of modern economies. Machines replaced labor. Cars replaced horses. Entire industries began depending on a steady supply of fuel. And for the first time, energy wasn't just about convenience. It was about profitability through efficiency. Then came the wars. During both world wars, oil wasn't just important, it was decisive. Tanks, planes, ships, none of them moved without it. Countries didn't just fight battles. They fought for access to fuel. Supply lines became as important as weapons, if not more important. Apart from the actions during the world wars, the interwar period between them had activities too. There was a power structure called the Seven Sisters Cartel, a group of major Western oil giants which controlled pricing, production, transport, and global supply chains. Their influence over oil and its profits during this time was of a monopoly itself. And suddenly, oil wasn't just economic power, it was geopolitical power. And this is where the focus shifted. Because the largest reserves weren't in the United States or Europe. They were in the Middle East. Places like Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, and Kuwait held massive amounts of oil beneath the surface. And as global demand grew, control over those regions became more valuable than ever, as well as the export points. At first, Western companies dominated extraction and distribution, but that didn't last. Over time, countries with the oil began to realize something. They weren't just sitting on resources, they were sitting on leverage. They had the power position, and that realization would change everything. Until then, oil had been relatively stable. Prices moved, but the system felt predictable. Supply flowed, demand grew, and most people never questioned it. It was a commodity you could rely on. Then that illusion broke. In 1973, several major oil-producing countries, led by members of OPEC, cut off exports to parts of the world. Not because they ran out of oil, but because they chose to. Supply didn't disappear, it was restricted. Think of it like this. If you and 19 other people bought 1 gallon of water a day from a store every single day, and then suddenly the store only sold 10 gallons of water a day, it's a supply and demand issue. Nobody stopped needing water, there is just less of it. Almost overnight, prices surged, gas stations ran dry, lines formed. Entire economies felt the shock. And for the first time, the world saw something clearly. Oil wasn't just a commodity, it was a weapon. Countries that controlled supply could influence prices, economies, and even political decisions far beyond their borders. And there wasn't a quick fix, because the global economy had already been built around it. You couldn't just replace oil overnight. You couldn't switch systems instantly. Everything, from transportation to manufacturing, depended on it. And once that dependence was exposed, stability was never guaranteed again. After that, oil never really settled down again. The idea that prices would stay stable was gone. What replaced it was something harder to manage: cycles, booms, crashes, spikes, collapses. In the decades that followed, control over oil became more fragmented. OPEC still had influence, but it wasn't absolute. New players entered the market. New technologies changed production, and supplies started coming from places that weren't dominant before. One of the biggest shifts came from the United States, with a process called shale and fracking. Here's a bare-bones explanation of what that is. Shale is a type of rock that has oil trapped inside of it. Fracking is short for hydraulic fracturing, a process which is used to get the oil out. You'd drill into the rock, pump in high-pressure water, sand, and chemicals, crack the rock open, and boom, oil and gas flow out. Not really environmentally friendly, but hey, oil is oil, right? And with the rise of this process, the US massively increased its own oil production. For a while, it looked like the balance of power might shift yet again. More supply meant lower prices, at least temporarily. But oil doesn't stay simple for long. In 2008, prices surged to record highs, driven by demand and speculation. Then they collapsed just as fast when the financial system cracked. Then 2014 came around. The US was still pumping out money from the ground, but there was a problem. You see, shale and fracking was good and all, but very expensive to produce compared to conventional oil. And with the power balance shifting, Saudi Arabia and OPEC had only two options: cut supply and keep prices high, or flood the market and make the prices crash. For better or for worse, they chose option 2. Before the flood, oil prices were sitting at a good $100 a barrel. After it, it dropped to $30. Most shale and fracking companies went bankrupt because they couldn't cover costs anymore. Then 2020 came. COVID hit. Demand didn't just slow down, It stopped. Planes were grounded, travel halted, entire economies paused, and for a brief moment, oil prices went negative. Producers were paying to get rid of it because storage ran out. It was a reminder of something important. Oil isn't just about supply, it's about timing. Too much supply at the wrong time, prices crash. Too little at the wrong time, prices spike. At the same time, global tensions, including conflicts like the Russian-Ukraine war, disrupted supply routes and added even more uncertainty to the market. Investment in new oil production slowed down. Companies became more cautious. Governments began pushing toward alternative energy. And the assumption started to form that oil might matter less in the future. But demand didn't disappear. It stayed. And that gap between steady demand and uncertain supply is where things start to break again. And that brings us to today. Oil is still the foundation of everything around us. Right now, the world consumes over 100 million barrels of oil every single day. And that's not a rough estimate. That's a constant, global demand that has to be met, every day, without interruption. Now, in theory, there's a buffer. There's a thing called spare capacity, which is a system that mainly OPEC oil producers can bring online within 30 days and maintain for about 90 days. Basically, just pump out a bunch more oil in a short period to fix the market if it's ever needed. Problem is, the countries that can do this are Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Iraq, and Kuwait. And if you're following the news at all of the events during March 2026, you know what's going on in those countries right now, too. Depending on when you're seeing this video, the conflict between the US and Iran may still be ongoing, and, as of recording, the Strait of Hormuz is on a blockade for most ships. This strait is responsible for transportation of 20% of all oil in the world, which means prices instantly rose. For now, the price of oil itself is too unstable to be talked about in detail, or for me to tell you it's at any specific price, because it'll probably change in 5 minutes. But this just shows that everything is still insanely dependent on oil, and it will be for the foreseeable future. People talk about moving past oil, electric cars, renewable energy, a future that doesn't rely on it the way we used to. And eventually that might happen. But right now, the system still runs on oil. And that's the part people underestimate. They think oil is just another price on a chart. But it isn't. It's a signal. When oil rises, it tells you something is tightening. Somewhere in the system, supply isn't keeping up, risk is increasing, or control is shifting. And when that happens, it doesn't stay contained. It spreads into fuel, into food, into costs that most people don't even connect back to oil. And that's the uncomfortable part. For all the talk about moving forward, about new technologies and different energy sources, we haven't replaced the foundation yet. We've just layered things on top of it. So when oil hits $100 plus again, it's not some random moment. It's part of a pattern. One that's been repeating for decades. The only difference now is that the system is bigger, more connected, and more sensitive than it's ever been before. Which means when something shifts, even slightly, you feel it everywhere.